Welcome back to Tax to You, the channel where we answer all of your tax-related questions. Today, I'm going to be revealing 3 tips from an accountant to help you successfully appeal a penalty from HMRC for the late filing of a self-assessment tax return. If you don't already know, late filing penalties are issued by HMRC for any online return submitted after midnight on the 31st of January. All late submissions trigger an automatically generated £100 penalty. Providing the late return is submitted within 3 months of the deadline, the penalty remains at this amount. However, if a return is still outstanding after 3 months, then an additional penalty of £10 per day for a maximum period of 90 days begins to apply. Then at the 6-month mark, a further £300 penalty or 5% of the tax liability, whichever is the higher figure, and the same again if the return remains outstanding after 12 months. Before we go any further, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more helpful tax content. Submit your questions in the comments below and we will endeavour to get them answered either in the form of a reply or possibly a dedicated video just like this one. You can also find us at tax2u.co.uk because although our aim is always to educate our clients as much as possible and share this information, we understand that tax can be confusing, stressful, and time-consuming, and that's where we can step in and help. Check out the thousands of Trustpilot reviews from clients who trusted us to do just that. Our services include the preparation and submission of tax returns, registration for self-assessment, and even helping you to appeal late filing penalties from HMRC. To view our full range of services, visit us at tax2u.co.uk or follow the link below. Now, let's jump into the 3 tips that will help you successfully appeal a penalty from HMRC. Number 1 is bring your tax affairs up to date. This is important for 2 reasons. The first is to fix your penalty where it is. Leaving tax returns unsubmitted after the deadline will only result in additional penalties being issued on top of what you have now. Don't assume that your first penalty will be your last. It won't if the return remains outstanding. Check out HMRC's online penalty calculator, which will show you how late filing penalties can spiral out of control over time. The second reason is that HMRC won't consider waiving a penalty if you haven't submitted the return in question. Any appeal would be automatically rejected before a HMRC appeals agent gets to look at it. So don't waste your time or energy until you get your tax affairs up to date. First, you need to declare how much income you made for a particular tax year and submit that tax return to HMRC. Even if you don't have any tax to pay, you still need to have the tax return submitted. Tip number 2 is check for a trigger. There are a number of income triggers that require an individual to complete a self-assessment tax return, such as self-employed income or rental income over £1,000, your total taxable income exceeding £100,000, or needing to report foreign income to HMRC. The full list of triggers can be found on the gov.uk website. I'll include a link below. What you should be questioning though is, were you actually required to complete a tax return in the tax year that you received the penalty for? There are lots of people out there who register for self-assessment because at the point of registration they had a requirement to do so, but over time that requirement disappears because their income levels or sources of their income change. There are also lots of people who submit tax returns voluntarily for a number of different reasons. Unfortunately, in these situations, HMRC will often continue to request a submission from you each tax year, even though it technically isn't required. But if you can get HMRC to agree that the return wasn't actually a requirement, they can withdraw their notice to file a self-assessment tax return, and any late filing penalties associated with that tax year would automatically be removed. And tip number 3, determine a reasonable excuse. HMRC won't waive a penalty unless you can demonstrate to them that there was a credible reason why the return couldn't be submitted on time, which is what HMRC call a reasonable excuse. It's important to point out that once any tax year ends on the 5th of April, HMRC allow you 10 months to draft and submit your tax return before they issue the first £100 fine. Despite this, and as you might know, those 10 months can just fly by. So if that sounds familiar to you, it might be time to consider working with an accountant. Here at Tax to You, we make sure you receive plenty of reminders before the deadline arrives, and we'll draft and submit your tax return to HMRC for you on time. Of course, every situation is different, so there isn't an exhaustive list of reasonable excuses, but HMRC have been kind enough to provide us with some examples on their website, which include the death of a partner, an unexpected stay in hospital, a life-threatening illness, the failure of your computer software, postal delays for anyone submitting paper returns, and just note paper returns have slightly different submission deadlines, and issues with HMRC's government gateway, aside from forgetting your password or your government gateway number, because HMRC have recoveries in place for those. They also let us know that they do not consider any of the following to be a reasonable excuse: finding the system too difficult to use, not receiving your reminder, and making a mistake on your return. I would also point out though that HMRC may request proof to support your claim, so make sure any reasonable excuse that you have can be clearly demonstrated if requested. Before making an appeal, compare your reasonable excuse against these examples provided by HMRC and ask yourself, would an agent consider this excuse acceptable based on the examples? The more you can tie your situation to one of the credible examples given, the more likely they are to accept it. So there you have it, 3 tips to ensure a successful appeal of a late filing penalty for your self-assessment tax return. Bring your affairs up to date, check if there was a requirement to complete the tax return, and determine a credible excuse. Don't forget, at Tax to You, we can help you to appeal your penalty and get your tax affairs in order. If you choose to submit your tax return with us by the 29th of February this year, we will include a free appeal. For a full list of services, visit tax2you.co.uk or follow the link below. That is all for today. Thank you for watching. See you next time.